Welcome to Six and the Six. Oh, I just realized my favorite part of these is actually trying to figure out how to pronounce the last name of people I've known for a while.
It's
And
always fun.
I used to try to do it ahead of time, but if you can't embarrass yourself in public, what the heck? So here we go. Today's guest, the fabulous Team One women's field hockey coach at Roberts Wesleyan University, Marissa Kocher.
Kocher.
Oh,
I know.
that was my second guess.
It's always a good surprise.
Oh man. And the thing is that like I hate getting names wrong, so
Mhm.
one for me.
Well, there's so many people that have the Koch and they say cook and all the things. So,
I think it's because I'm a quarter German and maybe
mm,
like the Coker's a German kind of way you
yeah.
do that. Yeah. Anyway,
Yeah. You always think it's going to get easier when you get married, and it never does.
well, that's a whole other topic. um, Welcome. How are you doing on this warm and pleasant 34-degree day in Rochester, New York?
I know it's really pretty snowing out. So, I'm always a fan of the snow in the winter. So, yeah. And I'm at my house. So, having a good warm day.
Perfect. Um,
Yeah.
New field hockey program at Roberts. Certainly a reasonably new sport for me. Our
Yeah.
co-friend Julie Munson
Mhm.
helped me a little bit over the last couple summers, but it was kind of exciting to get into it a little more. Tell us a little bit about your journey. How did you start with the field hockey stick in your hand when you were little, all the way
Mm.
up to accepting Team One's job?
Yeah. Well, I think we also need to tell the story about how we came to be together in coaching too, because that's a funny story too.
That is a good
Have
one.
to get to that. Yeah. For me though, I started in fifth grade with just rec field hockey. I grew up in Maryland, so down in Maryland, field hockey is a little bit more popular for those of the younger age. And we didn't have modified field hockey, so you play rec league from sixth through eighth grade. That's normally what happens, and then you go to high school and you play your JV varsity years. So I started because my next door neighbors played field hockey, and they, in a lot of different areas of my life, played a really big role in me just looking up to them and wanting to be like them. So there was, yeah, at least three girls that lived next door that played, and so it was kind of a natural progression once, yeah, I became old enough to go to like a day camp, and that's how I started playing, and then just fell in love with the sport, and I just love how different it is than other sports. And yeah, it's really fun to get to, I think, even share about it when people don't know about it, especially now at Roberts. It's fun to get people excited and the Olympics coming up and things like that. So um in terms of coming to Roberts, that's a very long story. um but I went to my undergrad at Houghton, now university. Um, and I played field hockey there. So that, I guess, is the start of me being in New York and getting involved with field hockey here. I stayed as the assistant field hockey and assistant lacrosse coach at Houghton. So I don't know. So I always use my some lacrosse references in coaching. And I just really wanted to give back to the program, and we always had some great assistants that stayed on after their senior year. And so it was just one of those things that I used to say, not to many people, but to myself, like, oh, it'd be so cool if I could stay as the assistant after I graduated. And I didn't know that I like wanted to coach or not. I just thought that that experience of continuing to give back to a program I really loved was something I wanted to do. So that's how I kind of get started in coaching alongside taking like some classes in college.
That's pretty cool that the fifth grader with the stick who maybe wanted to fit in a little bit
Yeah.
um, ended up kind of spearheading a new program whose that purpose was kind of to empower and bring along, and
Mhm.
it's an interesting connection. I loved you said you throw in some lacrosse references into your practices. I'm
Yeah.
certainly guilty of multi-sport blending.
Yeah.
Who knows what comes up out of my brain?
Well, I love when people play multiple sports. I definitely lean on that side of things instead of specialization. So I think that the more you can draw from other experiences, the better people can maybe understand, but also there's just so much more like versatility and athleticism when you can bring in some other areas.
Yeah, and just from a standpoint of it almost doesn't matter what sport you're in, except
Yep.
maybe the mega popular ones. That to grow the game, you have to think differently,
Mm.
or else all the ideas kind of stagnate. So I think it's good to beg, borrow, steal, whatever you call it.
Yeah. Yep.
So when I think of Maryland, I think of lacrosse. I mean,
Yes.
especially on the girls, women's side. So how, I mean, there was field hockey in your neighborhood.
Mhm.
Did you intersect with lacrosse growing up, or were you kind of in this weird section of Maryland that didn't know what lacrosse was?
No, actually, my dad played high school lacrosse and he was a coach growing up. So that he coached my brother was a lacrosse goalie. So here you go. Getting crazy over there. And then my dad would help coach the rec league for my brother and then with the high school. And when I was younger, he coached at another like local high school. And so we always were the family that was going around with the teams to like the pizza parties after the games when I was younger. So I feel like I grew up with that like camaraderie of coaches and like athletics and the team. But I would say that I also understood the challenges of like how much coaching took away your time. So that was also something that I always felt like in the back of my mind I was really aware of in terms of like balancing the time commitment and your family and things like that. So yeah, I think it is interesting. I look back and I never was like, oh, coaching is in our family and I want to do it, but it ended up being a little bit like that.
Yeah, I wonder if subconsciously a little bit you had those seeds planted when
Right.
when you were at Houghton, you were like, I don't know, maybe this would be
Yeah.
okay. Did you get
Yeah.
to you witness kind of the pull of the coaching profession and the family life and I probably how that, pulls at any coach.
Right.
Um, I think watching you coach, I think it gave you a perspective of maybe kind of balancing those
Hmm.
things better in your life. Did you
Yep.
get the opportunity to sit at the kitchen table at night and see them laboring over practice plans and kind of get an administrative side of the coaching business?
He was never the head coach, so he was more of like the assistant who just like came and supported. And I think the exciting thing was always when you would see or hear the conversations about a kid who um has grown from freshman to senior year and they're like, "Oh my gosh, do you remember him back on JV or do you remember this?" And it was more about like the story arc of like just them developing and growing and then like going off to college and being like, "Wow, like you didn't think that this guy would go here or do this." And um yeah, I grew up in a very small town, so everyone really knew everyone. So I think the everyone was really cheering for people. So when people did like get to go to college and do things, it was really exciting. And so that was something my dad I remember always just being like, and still to this day talks about like, oh, so cool that this kid went and got to play in college or whatever. So yeah, not necessarily about the practice plans, but more about like the people.
I think that's to me, that's like the addictive part of being a coach is just seeing that you are able to help them on a path to find,
Hmm.
their ability to do something maybe they didn't think they were able to do and go on and rock it somewhere. I'm going to stand up for the assistant coaches here a little bit and say that,
Yeah.
some of us do a good amount of planning and
Yeah.
paperwork. Just
Yes, I don't ever remember again, I was young at that point when my dad was still coaching, like, with the high school, I was probably still elementary, middle school at that point, so I don't remember that, but yeah, I do remember being drugged to a lot of different, pizza parties and things. And I was always, like, the coach's daughter, so that's how I felt, like, even when he coached for my high school, when I was in high school, I was always yeah, "Oh, we can't do this because like, coach's daughter is around." I was like, okay. So I feel like I just was like used to, I don't know, turning some things off and being able to like compartmentalize my experiences a little bit.
That's funny you said that. One of my daughters used to be known as Little Nosy around
Oh,
she was like, I have a name.
yeah. Yep, that's how I felt too, especially with when I was in like a freshman sophomore year and all of the older like players. I was, yeah, not known for being Marissa.
Yeah. So if one of the first things I noticed about you being a head coach is you have a little bit of an affinity towards a love towards the goalie position, or maybe it's just the goalies, but either way. Um,
Yeah.
Now hearing that your brother was a goalie, did that kind of, I know that was lacrosse, but
Hmm.
did that give you a better appreciation that for that position as your journey through field hockey progressed?
Yeah. So when I was at Houghton, I was put with the goalkeepers as an assistant, and so I definitely spent a lot of time with them. And I think it maybe comes from my, I just want everyone to be included. So I don't like the separation that goalkeepers can get from being away from the field player. I don't like that they're sometimes forgotten or not focused on in terms of like a practice plan or something like that. And so I think sometimes that can be easy. And I feel like I was maybe put in that position of like, okay, go and do whatever with these girls. And so yeah, I guess I understand the crazy side because I my brother's only a year younger than me, so I grew up very close with the goalkeeping side of things. But yeah, I don't like the separation. So I think that's why I have a big love for the goalkeepers because I think they need to know just as much as anybody else, and vice versa with field players. So yeah.
Yeah, that I mean that's how I've ended up where I'm at, basically
Mhm.
wanting to, one, help integrate those with the full team because the head
Mhm.
coaches, honestly, you've got a ton other things to worry about, right?
Mhm.
So yeah, going down there, letting them work on some skill stuff. Just, hey, you guys go warm yourselves up. It's not,
Yeah.
they can do it if they're focused and know what to do, but in
Mhm.
general, you need someone. So
Yeah.
for sure. I guess we might as well get the story out of the way before we progress. So,
Yeah.
so from my perspective, our good friend Jules up at Southern New Hampshire, I was like, oh man, I want to get into some field hockey stuff. We kind of traded knowledge. She came to a lax camp. I went to a field hockey camp, did that for 2 years. And then I find out Roberts is getting field hockey. And
Mhm.
I'm like, yes, this could be awesome. I can add another goalie feather to my cap. And then I'm like, nope, 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 nope. Don't, you've got too much to do. Just say no. So I
Mhm.
battled good versus evil, the two sides of the coin. And I ended up saying, you know what? I'm just not going to do it. I've got too
Right.
much going on. And that was it. I resigned myself. I was steadfast. I was like, I made up my mind. This is
Mhm.
awesome. And who do I get an email from?
Me.
And I don't know if you were told that I have no ability to say no. And
No, I was not told that. I just told not very many things about you, to be honest.
so from my perspective, that's how it was. I'm like, well, I don't really know too much and I don't have a lot
Mm.
of free time. And you're like, okay. And I'm like, oh, okay.
And I was like, listen, I don't know if you even want to do this because I only have a volunteer position. You're like, I'll do whatever. And I was like, what is going on? So
uh,
yeah. But I think you said the day I decided to not reach out to you was the day I reached out to you. So I always remember that because I was like, especially with the two goalkeepers that we were bringing in, I wanted to do them justice, I think, in a certain way, because again, when you're building something new, and I had a really great experience at Geneseo with the intentionality that was given to the goalkeepers, and so I wanted to make sure that that was able to happen. But yeah, when you have just yourself, that makes it hard to give everyone what they need. And that's a big part of when I was starting the program. I was like, I don't want to do it halfway in a lot of different areas, and I want to make sure that, yeah, we're doing things well from the beginning. So yeah, I'm glad that it worked out.
I think I can safely say that our goalies made a successful goalie world this year. So
Yeah.
I think the plan, your plan worked.
Yes, I again with it when everyone met the first day, of course, because I nobody really knew each other until that first practice. And when you guys all connected, I thought, yeah, it's really cool to see different personalities come together. And I think that's the other thing about goalie world, and it's just like everyone's accepted. And so and everyone's cheering for each other. And when you have that camaraderie, I mean, in our program especially, it's really been contagious. It's really cool to see them interact and be excited, and how yeah, they set an example for the rest of everyone.
Yeah, well, and honestly, that's, it doesn't matter what sport, when there's multiple players
Hmm.
vying for one position,
Hmm.
it can become like a zero-sum game where it starts to get a
Right.
little too competitive and maybe too nasty and jealousy and this.
Hmm.
So I've always felt it was important to make sure they're at least have a decent perspective of, can we push each other, be happy for each other? Obviously, we want the minutes. That's a
Right.
given. I don't need to be told. So it's tough to do, and I think with the right relationships and the helping them through
Hmm.
some stuff, it can be done. So just don't room with another goalie.
Right. And that's exactly what I said. Because of course, before we had some other freshmen, it was just Abby and Avery. And I told them, I was like, you're not allowed to room together. And they were like, okay. And now it's just funny because they're inseparable. And I was like, maybe that would have worked in a sense, but I don't think that we would be where we are today if too much time together. But they still choose to spend a lot of time outside of hockey together.
Yes, the keyword choose. They're not stuck. So yeah, I totally agree.
Yep.
Um, so when you saw the opportunity to come to Roberts to be the head coach for Team One, um,
Hmm.
what excited you about seeing, like when you saw that and you decided to
Hmm.
go for it? What was exciting about that for you?
Yeah. So I think I'm really big into backstories. I feel like anytime there's a movie or something, I'm like, I gotta know like the prequel, like always. And so I the biggest thing is seeing it all come together throughout the past however many years. And I think my story too of how things have evolved was the most exciting, to know that it's kind of culminated in this program. Um, I talked to Bob Seagave, the AD. It was, oh my gosh, not last summer, but the summer before, so 2022. And he brought me this manila folder of field hockey newspaper clippings from like 2012. Like they were it was like 2012, 2015, and it was like Brighton field hockey and all these other Rochester area field hockey clippings. And he's like, I've been thinking about this sport here since then. And I was like, that is when I think it blew my mind of like, I am not the one necessarily starting something. I'm like stewarding work and like a plan that's been going along since since before I was involved, but also that that work has been in like my heart throughout my past experiences too. And so I really just love coaching, and I love field hockey, and I just wanted to do it full time, in a sense of like being able to invest all my time into the team. And that was something that I had as a part-time assistant. You're just, your hands are tied in certain ways of how like you can give as much as you can give. But so when this came up, the opportunity to do something brand new that had never really been done before, and to make it my own and with values that align with me, was really important. And so that was really, I think the exciting thing was seeing the whole thing unfold, and then um being able to be somewhere that really aligns with what I agree with and what I value. Because if not, I'm big believer in belief. And so if you can't be walking and talking the same message, then I'm always going to feel some insecurity about it. So that was the biggest thing for me. And so, yeah, it was really exciting. I wasn't really looking to go just like anywhere necessarily. And this was like, everyone was just like, you'll never get this opportunity ever again. So, yeah, that was pretty exciting.
Yeah, I love two things you said that really kind of struck home with me. The first one was, and it's a great perspective that we don't often think or recognize that what we're doing may be a result of someone's vision or thought
Mm,
or sight. You said Bob had maybe this going on in his head since
hmm
2012 timeframe, and it's just been stewing in there. And I think, just kind of recognizing that. I just think that was a cool perspective.
yeah.
And the other one was finding a place that you're passionate about field hockey, you're passionate about coaching. That checks a couple boxes, but then
hmm
there's the whole alignment with, how I operate, because
hmm
I don't think if we do last long at a place when that's out of whack, we're either extremely dishappy, that's a great word, um, extremely unhappy, or there's a lot of tension because we're not where
Right.
we want to be. And who knows what the outcome of that is? Maybe you go against your coaching philosophies, maybe
Right.
it's a terrible coworker. So
Right.
I,
And I can't, when there's like that pit in your stomach of like that things just don't, you're like, I'm doing fine work and I agree with that, but like, I don't know, I've just been at other places and this is just like historically with jobs that it just never has fit both, and I was very tired of being like going and then just being like, but this and like this just doesn't feel right. And so yeah, I don't know. There's just like you trust your gut in a sense, and so yeah, I don't know. This has like been the one of the first opportunities that I feel like I get to like go to work and I'm not feeling like, yeah, this dissonance of, I don't know, the tension between the two things. So that's a good sign.
yeah, and the other thing, you called this like somebody told you, a friend, or that it
hmm
was an opportunity like this won't come along. And I call
hmm
those my M&M moments. There's that you only
mm
have one opportunity to go kind of thing, don't blow it.
mm.
Every time I've seen one of those come by and grabbed it full-heartedly and lovingly, as soon as I got acceptance for it, I've been like, oh man, shoot, what am I going to do now? I actually got it.
Yeah.
So we talked about the excitement. Once
Yeah,
you
you
were
put so
hired,
much work into getting the job and then
yeah, so the dog catches that cart. So what kind of like fear-based things, once you
Mm.
got the job, were you like, oh man, what?
Yeah, I think the I put the pressure on myself a lot, and so while institutionally it was very like, I don't know, was hired in March, and so the fact that we were starting in August, I was like the whole time, if I don't get this many kids, what's going to happen? And as we went along, just thinking about, okay, we have this many kids and I don't want to be making a promise I can't keep or anything like that. And so I was like very, very careful about how I was recruiting and who I was recruiting, and the message that was getting across. And I think my biggest fear was just like, don't fail the girls you're bringing in. And so and myself in a sense, because I, like, again, I go 100% into anything that I do, and I was afraid that it would make me like a bad coach or a bad reflection on myself if it failed in a sense. But it someone just kept saying to me like, you you just don't know at the end of the day what who's going to say yes, who's going to say no, and you just have to keep pushing through. And I think the more that I let go of the end goal, the more that actually happened, and I realized throughout the whole process that like I don't have as much control as I think I do. And the more that I can really just trust, like, okay, this is what was given to me, and I'm doing it all with the best of intentions and with the best of what I can do. And that will pay off. And it could pay off either way, but either if it went that we were just having a club team for a year, if it went that we were actually competing Division 2, like that was what the plan was in a sense. And so I'm very like proud that we were able to move forward and have a competition season. I think that I still am in awe that when when we had that first game, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm just so thankful that um it all worked out and people were as bought in as I was to what could happen. But yeah, the biggest fear for me was like when it came August, what are we doing and what is gonna happen? And yeah, that was the thing in the back of my mind that kept me sometimes fearful, but also fueled me a little bit in getting where we needed to go.
Yeah, I love the fact that you said like when you decided to loosen your grip on
Mhm.
that a little bit, that it started to come together. I think
Yeah.
that's a great lesson of maybe over wanting to force
Right.
the process, or just even in
Yeah.
general over wanting something. I that happens to me, and it's like all of a sudden you loosen up, and bam, there it is.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I mean, it's funny because you can send 1,000 emails in a day and get nothing back, and then the one day you're just like, okay, I'm gonna relax. Someone decides that they're committing. Like you literally are not in control of what anyone's decision is, and I that's the coolest thing I think I've learned for me too is like, yeah, you can do the work and at the same time, yeah, you're not in control of some pieces and seeing the faithfulness come through and knowing that you're not as in control as you think you are. It's definitely, I don't know, more of a release for me in a
I,
sense.
we've talked about this a couple times, but
Hmm.
I still think, standing on that field the first day, the home field, that first game with the team there, I still think it's an amazing accomplishment to have like 6 months and we have a
Hmm.
product on the field. I
Yeah.
say product lovingly. And just the energy of the support of the Roberts community for that first game. I mean, it was exciting for me. It had to be extremely rewarding for you to, and you mentioned it a little bit, just to see that out there, regardless of what the score
Yeah.
said.
Yeah. No, and we talk a lot about how success like is not there's not one definition of success. And so having people out there having lines on the field, having goals, having girls playing field hockey, like I just kept thinking this time last fall, this sport was not being played here. Like this is so exciting and just for the sport that I love so much, seeing it being brought somewhere that I'm like more people get to love this cool sport. Like it's just exciting to even bring girls on campus that have that passion and then we get to do that together. And I don't know, I just think it's like the best sport ever. So it makes me happy that we are able to have it here and offer another option and another like a different way of doing things too. Like that this program was never existed before and that there was still space for something new within the field hockey world. Like, I don't know. It just blows my mind every time and it's exciting.
I just love your passion for the sport of field hockey.
Yeah,
It
it's
it
fun.
seeps out of you and into the team culture and the team
Hmm.
environment. And I can see a difference in just the way people carry themselves in practice from
Hmm.
like the first one. And you said something early in an early interview about you wanted to, or one of your things you liked about coaching was guiding the student athletes in a
Yeah.
transformational experience.
Hmm.
Um, when it comes to setting up the culture, the foundation of the program culture, how did that how did that thought process start to build that foundation?
Yeah, I think my experience as a college athlete was transformational. And so and even just my coaching journey, like I was not the player I think if you looked back at the roster, you wouldn't be like, Marissa at that time Messick is going to be a Division II field hockey coach. Like that is not I was the role player, I was the versatile player, I was the one who I think I played every position except for goalkeeper in college and maybe like center mid. Like really I really value all of the pieces of someone who can really be that versatility player. And so the transition for me having to work and learn and know that that's possible for other people and then that as a college athlete the change that happened just from freshman to senior year with my team and how impactful my team was in guiding and becoming who I am. I just highly value that experience. So that's a little bit where that came from. So I got to really take the pieces that I liked from a lot of different experiences that I have. And so that's where I started, was like, okay, this worked. Okay, I love this. What things do I really care about? Because again, if I don't care about them, I'm not going to be able to carry through on them. So that was a good thing, but also I think so you talk about what's like the fear. The fear is that I'm not good enough and have good enough ideas or thoughts that it's enough to be a foundation of a program. Like uh yeah, oh, your coaching philosophy, it informs the program, and I'm like, is that like good like is that good enough? Like I don't know. But the fact that as I talked to recruits, people wanted what I also wanted, and people wanted the experience that I am like, okay, these things are important to kids, and these things are important to like the experience I had, and that people are still looking for that was like affirming. So I think it took shape a little bit in my philosophy, my beliefs, some of my experiences, and just, yeah. Then when we brought it to the team, taking their perspective into account too. And so I know, like, I had brought, I knew it was important to be messaging what we were about throughout the recruiting process. And then my favorite thing is that it's collaborative, and the girls who come on campus get to have a say in it too. And so we did add and tweak and make different things based on the team and then team's needs and what they really are passionate about too. So that's my favorite part, is I don't get to do it alone. Because I'm like you, where yeah, I like to work as part of a team too. So
I
yeah.
think it's interesting you said, looking at you as a player, we wouldn't
Hmm.
be surprised you ended up where
Yeah,
you're at. And yet I see the other side of that, in that,
of course you do.
well, and I have the benefit of knowing you on this end of the whole
Yeah.
process, but it's like being somebody who maybe was in more of a role player
Hmm.
position as a player, and getting shuffled around to other positions. I think it gave you a good
Hmm.
360 mental, say, performance mindset picture, valuing. I
Yeah.
forget who said the quote, but don't let the last kid on the bench die or go unnoticed, or
Mhm.
something to that effect. So I think for a program starting off brand new with, not the top 20 picks out
Mhm.
of the recruiting class, uh, someone like you is needed to build that strong
Yeah.
foundation if a program is going to carry on. So I think you ended up exactly where you were meant to be.
Mhm. Which is, again, really cool that the experiences that I had, that it like someone who, okay, was an All-American or had certain accolades, like you normally think, okay, they'll be the ones to go coach and do all the things and love the sport. And so the fact that I was able to have different experiences that are equally valued and usable is super exciting. And that, I don't know, I think that also speaks to the fact that those things are important and the roles are important. And just even to trust and like, I'm going to do something different and I'm going to do it differently, and to know that it still works even though it's not the same thing. That, and again, everyone is different. I feel like I just sometimes was a little bit hard on myself. And
No.
yeah, I don't know.
So you said, like, I really liked about two things. You said that thinking differently, different ways to approach things, and you weren't the big D1 recruit who you'd expect to be a coach. And I think sometimes those superstars, I mean, awesome role models in terms of
Hmm.
technical, tactical things like that. But I also feel, when you got to that level, you can get a little myopic, narrow
Mm.
focused about what works because it worked for you and you're successful. So you're like, you you a generality, of course, but you're quicker to discount an idea because, that didn't work for me.
Right.
Whereas that wider perspective,
Hmm.
and again, like you said, everyone's different, and I think you don't have to have been a high level player to be a good coach, and
Right.
vice
No.
versa. So
Yeah. Yeah.
um, I saw you. And we kind of touched on this. You mentioned you wanted to be a coach where you could go all in.
Mhm.
Um, and we talked about, kind of aligning with your why and your purpose and being able to mold the program kind of. Um, do you feel that you have gone all in at this point, or are you still at like 80% and you're still building that tower?
No, I'm pretty sure that my husband would say that I'm all in. My brain never shuts off. So yeah. And that's the thing that's important to me though, is like, especially with college, and I view college more holistically, and that you're not just growing on the field, off the field academically, but like, how are you being prepared for life? And so, um, I people are making really big decisions to go to college and to spend 4 years of their time somewhere. And so, and to be a part of a family, and to like bring their family to campus and to be a part of that for 4 years. And so I view that this is also part of my family. And so I don't think that there can be a separation, and there should be in certain areas. Um, I try to make decisions that I would want my athletes to make. So when we think about making like family first choices, I want to set an example of like, okay, if I can't choose my family over field hockey, what am I telling my athletes? That they need to choose a sport over something that else is that's important. So yeah, I do think that they need to be connected, and I try to do that as best as possible. I think that I'm more excited because we have a lot of people coming in whose families are like, my dad's never missed a game. This is like 4 people who have told me this, and I'm like, "Great, we're gonna have so many more so many more dads on the field this year."
Right.
But that's also like, I don't know, I value the commitment of things, and I appreciate that people still value commitment too, because I think we've lost touch in that a little bit.
Well, I like it's a great leadership trait, not just a great person trait, as you said, kind of walk your walk, right? You
Mhm.
wouldn't ask them to do something you weren't willing to do.
Yeah.
Funny enough, I just heard something today. It's like something like I'm watching your feet, not your teeth.
Mm,
It's basically it's like you can talk all you want, but are you actually walking it?
yeah.
Um, so yeah, I think that's important too, because a- and coupled with a little bit of empathy, maybe for if we can
Yeah.
remember back when we were college kids, and they may or may not have it a little harder than we did with some distractions. So I think
Mhm.
we talk about it a lot. It's easy to put dead hard fast rules in place, and it leaves you
Right.
kind of backed into a corner sometimes.
Mhm. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think I had an iPhone till I was a junior in college or something like that, maybe senior year. So I could imagine what it would be like to have a lot of more distractions just at your fingertips. That's a lot.
Wow, how did you know all your friends were happy if you couldn't see how many their likes on their Instagram posts? It's
Oh man.
mind boggling.
Yeah.
Um, you talk a lot about the small things,
Mhm.
attention to detail. And I think as we've talked about some things like with the valuing the role player, the kind of perspective and
Mhm.
things that it makes a lot of sense for me. And they're important, right? When you're looking to bring people on board,
Mhm.
um, what clues, what signs are there that they pay attention to the little details? How do you
Mhm.
know how do you know if you're looking at me that I'm a person that pays attention to details?
Mm. I'll use an example. I was just going through some recruiting emails, and I had notes from a tournament, and I wrote, so a couple. I That girl looks like she has fun. And then I wrote, that girl was really nice to the ref. And like really she jogged off the field and grabbed the ball. Like those certain things I'm like very pay attention to, because if you can't take care of the things that are simple, like if you imagine someone who like never went off to the field to get the ball when it went out of bounds, like how annoying is that? And so I don't know, those are some of the things that I think about. I mean, just like even hard work, character, sportsmanship, like they're big words, but I think without those, yeah, a lot of other things would fall apart. So, yeah, that was really funny when I was reading back, and I can remember that kid. Like when I read that note, I was like, I know exactly who I was talking about because um, they showed kindness, like just in terms of even someone was like, I was like, she's like brought the energy to her team. Like she was so excited about what her teammates were doing, and um, I don't know. I think it's those little things, and oftentimes I think people are unhappy in experiences because how often and frequent the little things build up. Like you hear about they just we never had communication. And like if there's a lack of over and over and over again, eventually that becomes annoying and it becomes a big thing. And so I try to think about what things would really deter me. And I don't know. I just think that the little details really make people feel special and valuable. And so, yeah, try to integrate that as much as possible because they can really make or break an experience and how you feel about your role and who you are and where you are. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
man, I think communication is a huge one.
Hmm.
I think if you can find someone who has a glimmer of
Hmm.
that they know what's going on in that regard. I say it all the time. You've got to give people a break when you're talking with them. You know, and I'm talking about the student athletes. Eh,
Right.
there's tons and tons of adults that are horrible communicators,
Hmm.
and what we're going to expect these, you know, late teen,
Yep.
early 20-year-old kids to know how to
Yeah.
do it, and we can't even role model it to them half the time.
Hmm.
And the rest of that stuff you talked about, you know, that's character.
Yeah.
It's, you know, are you going to get the ball? Are you going to be
Hmm.
polite to the ref? Are you going to walk up and support your teammate? Or are you going to try to tear him down?
Hmm.
There's signs everywhere. I just think sometimes as coaches we tend to focus on the X's and O's and the
Hmm.
are they fit and things like that. And you know, next thing we know, we have a culture wrecker. And
Right.
man, culture is like a tree. It takes years and years for it to grow, and it
Yes.
takes one season to chop it down.
Ooh, that's a really good analogy.
I stole it from somewhere.
Well, and details like if we want to talk on field stuff, like oh my gosh, one reception can change everything. I don't know. I and maybe this is just because I am how I am, or maybe this is because of being a assistant coach for so long. Like my job was very much development and small picture things, and I think or maybe that's just what I liked, and that's what where my role ended up being. But um, like the difference in one touch on the ball and how you can get ahead. I just think if we can take care of those things, how much better, I don't know, of a foundation we can have, and then how much more we can accomplish by, I don't know, focusing on some other things too. So it's a win-win, but you're never too good for the basics. So
No, well,
gotta,
on the other side of that coin, you talked about the value of that touch to get yourself into
yeah.
space and have a good opportunity. But what about the flip side of that? Every single thing that happens has some kind of
Hmm.
ramification for something, but it might be the first minute of the game. You're like, it's only the first minute of the game. You
Hmm.
make a bad touch, results in a turnover, results in a goal. Well,
Hmm.
maybe that's why you're having to hustle your butt back with 10 seconds left, hoping to hang on to the game.
Yeah.
So, you know, I don't think it can't be undervalued in my opinion either.
Yeah.
And then how do you work on those details, and how do you, in my example, how do you work on them under pressure, right? So then it's not just let's not just stand here and pass the ball. Let's actually either
Hmm.
move or have someone try to take
Yeah.
me out.
Yeah, and part of I think is the intentionality too. I think you mentioned like you can stand there and pass, or you can work your butt off and make that passing the hardest thing you've ever done at practice. And it's hard. And I think I'm still learning this too. It's like how do you focus on the details without being like nitpicky to a fault of someone feeling like you're just keep saying or honing in on the same thing over and over again. But also just getting, yeah, I don't know, that focus and everything. I don't know. I'm still learning that, but that's I don't know. There's a big difference in the attention and the I don't know. I remember I always felt like no matter what I did, I was gonna do it 100%. And so, yeah, whether it was some passing or if it was whatever drill, it was like I'm gonna make it known that I'm working as hard as possible because I want to make my teammates better and I want to become better because I'm making them better. So that's something that I know I learned, and that's part of our philosophy too. So,
I'm willing to bet if I talk to every coach that won a national title across
mm,
every sport for the last couple of years, that they all paid attention to details to get to that level.
yeah, yeah.
So
I
yeah,
know. I think about John Wooden and how he was even picky about the order which they put their socks on his athletes, and I was like, saving time at practice, you know?
yeah, you don't want to get blisters. You're the top scorer. What if you have to sit out for one
Yeah,
play?
yeah,
Everything impacts everything.
it does.
I know you value our circle a lot.
Yes.
We've talked about it. You've poured yourself into it. It's matching your values and where you want to go and stuff like that. So talk about the value of varying perspectives within that circle. And I
Mm,
see two sides of it. There's the team when you throw stuff out there for them to kind of banter about. How important is having different perspectives for them in terms of accelerating their growth in multiple
mhm.
areas? And then part B of that question is for you personally, surrounding yourself with coaches with varying perspectives so you don't have a bunch of bobblehead coaches just going, great idea, coach, great idea, coach.
Mhm. Oh, yeah. I that's something that I remember, being at Geneseo, and I was always told, "I want you to challenge me," and that was really hard for me because I've always thought, "Okay, it takes time to get there, right? To be the person who you have the trust that you can trust that someone can challenge you," but I, yeah, there's nothing like a yes man. Like, that is also to a detriment, so I yes, that I think my varying perspectives comes from, again, preparing you for life. And we while we are at a Christian school and a faith-based school that I believe provides the supportive environment. Like, if you can't have the trust or the supportive environment, you can't have the hard conversations. So for one, like, that matters. Like, the context matters, and who and what is going on to have those conversations. And you can't just take one of those difficult conversations somewhere else that you maybe don't have the environment to have the conversation in.
Yeah, so
Uh,
back to communication we talked
yeah.
about there.
So that's really important. And that's why I think we have something so special, because I think you need to be challenged, and you're going to get into your job. You're going to work with a bunch of different people that all have different values and different beliefs. And you can even both be have the same faith, same church, same whatever, and do things differently. Everyone is different and unique and has different strengths and different ways of doing things. And so if we don't start trying to figure that out and work with each other now, when you're supposed to be being prepared as young adults, then I don't think we're doing them justice when they get out into to real life and the workforce. So that's where a lot of my reasoning comes from. But I do think that there's a place just for belonging, and so you can't just have belonging and agreement. You have to have belonging and respect of different people's opinions and ways of doing things. And you may learn, hey, maybe now I'm challenged in my worldview, and like that brings something else up, and it either strengthens or makes you see something from a different perspective. So yeah, I think it's important. And yeah, the circle, our team, it's great.
And I think being open to learn about other people's perspective, I think it's scary for a lot of us because it shines
Mhm,
a light into, I don't think we necessarily realize the box where we put ourselves in based
mhm,
on our upbringing, what we've been through, on, and to kind of not have the ego or have the openness to be like,
mhm,
oh, okay, hold on. Tell me, if you have a totally different experience.
Mhm.
Why are we butting heads here?
Right.
That's hard to do.
Yeah.
And I
And I
think,
think sometimes people just don't know. Like I remember, and still to this day, it's like if you don't know what you believe or you feel like you can't speak up for something, like even just listening and trying to understand other people's perspectives at least gives you an understanding. You don't have to have a side. Like I don't believe that you have to take a side, and like you just have to be open enough to at least listen and understand, and then maybe eventually you'll formulate whatever opinion or whatever you have. But I think that there's the act of listening does a lot more than you think it does in terms of building trust too. So
yeah, it's funny. It's back to you're gripping onto something so
yeah.
tight. This time it's your beliefs. If you let go a little
Mhm.
bit, and I, I don't know. You said something in there too that made me think of like sometimes it might be scary to let go and look at what we think we know because maybe we don't really know why we agreed with it to begin with. We didn't do
Mhm.
our research and we're just like, yeah, that's what I believe. And then you get
Mhm.
challenged and you're like, well, hold on. Actually, I don't know anything about that. Why do I
Yeah.
believe it?
Right.
So
Yep.
wow, good. We could chat about this crazy stuff for days. But I want to respect your time.
You're good.
We've been about 50 minutes, so
It felt very fast.
I told you it wasn't a big thing to stress about. We do this all the time.
No, it's funny that talking for 50 minutes is easier than listening to something for 50 minutes. I feel like I'm like this is easy to do, but harder to focus and listen. Yeah.
And that's why we'll have 5 views because people won't want to listen for 50 minutes, but it was easy to
I
talk
know.
for 50 minutes. Marissa, I appreciate you taking the time out of your
Yeah.
busy day to be on. And I will see you at the practice court soon.
Yeah, tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Yeah, go Red Hawks.
Yeah, see you later.